Today's first panel is about education reform. Whether you have children or not, we all need to take part to ensure we create an educational system that is preparing our youth to compete in this global economy. If we as a state and nation want to sustain being a leader, then we need to address the education crisis. If we don't, then we will not have the talent to sustain the infrastructure for the 21st century and beyond. We all need to do our part, from government to institutions to businesses. That's why at Comcast, one of the pillars of our community investment is education. Through the Comcast Leaders and Achievers Scholarship Program, we provide over $13 million to students across the country since 2001. Each year, we provide more than $1.2 million of video, high-speed internet service to over 3,500 schools here in Northern California. We are bridging the digital divide by investing in computer centers throughout Northern California and digital literacy programs like the Comcast Digital Connectors that helps train youth to use broadband and digital tools to prepare for careers in digital media. Together, we can do our part, and today's panelists are certainly the ones to guide us and lead the way. Today's first panel is called Waiting for California's Superman. Well, one of the nation's leaders, who may be that education Clark Kent in waiting, is our first speaker, Montgomery County, Maryland Superintendent, Dr. Jerry Weast. Dr. Weast has done an impressive job transforming schools in his district, and now, as an advisor to schools around the country, he will be taking his innovative ideas and reforms on the road to help out school districts across the country. A 35-year veteran of education, Dr. Weast has led every district in his charge through its toughest challenges, from contentious mergers to record-breaking success in minority achievement. Furthermore, his strategies for both unions and business involvement are the subject of numerous studies, national articles, and books. Dr. Weast, thank you for joining us today. I'm also honored to introduce the Honorable Tom Torlakson, our State Superintendent of Public Instruction. As Chief of California's public school system, and this panel would not be complete without its moderator. For over 3 decades, John Fensterwald has covered education as a journalist for both the San Jose Mercury News and as an editorial writer and as an editor and co-writer for the Silicon Valley Education Foundation. And with that, I will now turn it over to the program to John and Dr. Jerry Weast. Thank you very much and enjoy.
There you go. So it's a pleasure to be here this morning discussing education. I guess education goes first because they want to get your blood going. And we'll do that, though, in a stimulating way today. And Bonnie Reese was to have joined us today, and she is ill and was unable to fly up here from Southern California, so we're disappointed. But we do have 3 terrific people to discuss education. And as you know, the title, Waiting for California's Superman, a new model for education reform, is a reference to the controversial and I'd say inspiring movie by Davis Guggenheim of that name, and it's about the success of charter schools. But in fact, there are district schools that are duplicating those success every day, and in fact, on rare occasions, there's a district, an entire district, that can produce those remarkable results. And we're fortunate today, that district is Montgomery County Public Schools, and we have Superintendent Jerry Weast with us today. And Jerry had won the 2010 Malcolm Baldrige National, his district won the National Quality Award, and that's street cred with this crowd, Jerry. So why don't you start off and with a presentation about your success in Montgomery County and other things you want to talk about.
Thank you, John. How about that entry? Wasn't that great? Let's talk about Superman for a little bit. First, it was a fictional character in comic books. A fictional character in comic books made by a team of people. And so I want you to remember the word team when we go through. I'm not Superman. It takes a team of people to make a difference in the lives of children. Second thing, I want to thank the Bay Area Council for having me here, being with my good friend Tom Torlakson. And I want to do a shout out to the Marin Community Foundation. Great bunch of people over here. Thank you. Now there's two things that scare me. One is a clock going and it's going tick, tick, tick down. I got 15 minutes to give you 35 years of experience. The second one is I'm painfully aware that everybody in this audience has gone to school and has an opinion, or maybe has children in school, or maybe grandchildren. And you have an opinion about schools, school systems, and school systems have brands. I want to talk to you a little bit about deliberate excellence and California. But first I want to take you to the international rankings. We have had what we call a Sputnik moment when you listen to the president speak in his address. And that is, we begin to slip in our international rankings. That's where the problem is. The problem is that we have not changed the amount of time or the outcomes since you were in school. If you think about it, we're still going 180 days, but what you need to be able to know and do now when you graduate is different. And when many of us graduated from high school, you could go right into the California system of higher education, didn't have to prove anything. How many out here went to the California system and just with a high school diploma? All right, you know what I'm talking about. What has changed now is you can't just walk out with a diploma and get into almost any college or university. You have to test. You have to hit certain standards. So a high school diploma is different than college and career ready. Career ready is the same as college ready. We've slipped over the last 10 to 12 years. This is 74 different countries all around the world. If you unpack it another way and take a look at the impact of poverty and what poverty has done with our student population, and the largest population growing, at least in our county and many of the other counties, are children in poverty. In the last 12 years that I've been here, 57% increase in poverty, 120% increase in kids that don't speak English. Now, you have to offset that impact of poverty. In the United States, when you take a look at us compared to other countries across the world, high average performance had high social equity when you look at the results. In fact, if you put us on a graph and you show the disparities, you can see that the high average performance here for some of our countries, this didn't come out too well, it looks like, but that one up in the far right is Shanghai. Shanghai with 5 million immigrants coming in to work. The one right here at the axis and over to the left, as you would see it, that's the United States. When you unpack our data, you will find that our Latino and African American population are not doing too well. Korea, Finland, Shanghai, China, and Shanghai, China was in the lower left, down there below the Czech Republic 10 years ago. You can change over time if you start differentiating and deal with not only your performance, but your social equity issues. Next slide shows you the changes in Montgomery County. Huge changes over a short period of time. But it also shows on this slide how we are now leading the country on AP Performance Advanced Placement, Participation, and Performance. We're also 150 points, or 140 to 150 points above the national average on the SAT test, on the ACT test, on the AccuPlace. We have a graduation rate that leads the country for 2 years in a row, the highest graduation rate of all the large systems. Newsweek says all of our schools are in the top 3% in the country. How did that occur with all of these changes? How did we move there? And does it make any difference if you move there? The next slide shows that our performance with Hispanic males over a 12-year period has gone up every year. When you look at this slide, and I want to show you why that makes a difference in a little bit, because we follow all of our kids right through college. Right through college. In 1999, and on the far right of your slide, that is the typical performance for America of Hispanic students. 4.7 pass an AP test. The typical performance for all children in America is 16.9, and the 1 out of every 4, 28%, take the test. Over the 12-year period, you can see we've increased every year, and it is about persistence. In fact, our African American males do the same thing. I choose these two populations because all of our populations are above the national average. Graduation rates above the national average, Hispanics and African Americans, as well as AP results. You have to measure the metrics in a way that produce performance, increase engagement, and make a difference. So you have to have the right people, you have to have the right plan, you have to be persistent over time, and you have to build capacity to initiate and execute on that plan. Wall Street Journal came down on the same day that they were endorsing vouchers on the editorial page and put us on the front page and showed on their graph how much difference we had done with college and career ready. Those 4 little lines over there took off when we started to really take a look at our expectations, take a look at our curriculum, take a look at our structure and our culture. Why does that make a difference? Advanced placement, according to ACT and the College Board, is probably one of the best predictors of college success. The United States of America needs 60% of its children to be college graduates. You know, we only have 50 million children in school. You have about 5 million here in California. We can't afford to have a small percentage of them get across that graduation line prepared. We need vast numbers. 76%, and we keep track of this through the College Clearinghouse. That'll be one of the things I'll advise you to do. We look at kids all the way through their college career. It's kept track of by the College Clearinghouse. We buy the data for our 25 high schools. We buy every year, $400 is all it cost us per class per high school to find out whether the juice was worth the squeeze, to find out whether we really made a difference, to find out what happened when that. 76% of our children who got a 3 on an AP test, any AP test, because it means expectations, 76% graduated from college within 6 years with a bachelor's degree or higher. 59% of our children, second bar, green bar, graduated in 6 years with a college degree, bachelor's degree or higher, just by taking the class even though they didn't get a 3, versus 24%. Now these are our children. This is about 40,000 students in our sample. You can see the real big effect on the Hispanic population, the big population growth in California, isn't it?
Absolutely.
48%. I believe that's 4 times higher than the national average, graduating from college with a bachelor's degree.
Good.
So, Mr. Senator Pro Tem, it is about not only education, but it's about rigorous education. The kind of education you want for your own children, the kind of education everybody's child deserves. We don't have tracks. We have one brand, one track, college and career ready, that gives children options and opportunities. And we keep track of them all the way through. You have to have both a structure to do that. And we're very proud of our system being one of only 6 systems in the country to win the highest award from the President of the United States, the Baldrige Award. It isn't about politics. They sent observers to come in just like they do in businesses, and we were in the same category, education, business. You have to have that structure. We have chosen to get 80% of our children college ready by 2014. Very specific, very time-bound, very articulated all the way down. But you can't do that without the people. You know, in business, you want to be the business where they want to work. You want to be the best business in your outcomes, but you want to be a place where they work. So you have to have a highly engaged workforce. So we work on engagement and structure, and it's the tension between those two things that help us achieve what our children are achieving. In fact, we call it deliberate excellence. This comes after 35 years of being a superintendent. I finally figured a couple of things out. One is, don't chase all the rabbits that everybody puts on your stage. You know, be careful that you don't chase everything and follow every new trend. Before you go into a system, discover what you're doing. Many of the things you're doing are at cross purposes, not aligned, not heading where you want to go. The next thing that you need to take a look at is commit to excellence. We committed to 80% by 2014, college ready. We defined it. It is a 1650 on an SAT test, 24 on a ACT test, 3 on an AP test. All of that is well defined. Evaluate everything that you do. Eliminate those things that aren't productive. Evaluate everything that you do. Eliminate those things that are not productive. Repurpose that time and energy back to your commitment. And engage your workforce. The biggest two problems we had to solve, our teachers weren't engaged and our kids weren't engaged. If you've got kids, I bet you hear every once in a while they're bored. When they come in kindergarten, they have a light in their eyes. We turn it out. We try to keep it on in Montgomery County. Same way with the new teachers. They want to solve the world's problems. They've got a bright light in their eye when we hire them. We want to keep that light on. So it is about engagement. Engagement to a commitment that makes a difference with children. And then innovate and monitor. If you do these things and you do them well and you have the right tension, you can have high average performance, high social equity, and it doesn't make any difference about race or socioeconomics. You can actually do things to offset or mitigate those. You have to have some predictive analytics. Many of the scores that are given across the United States of America aren't vertically articulated. Again, when I started and fell down coming in, I was thinking about time. Time is something that is so precious that you've got to use every minute to the fullest extent. You've got to be both efficient and effective. You need predictive analytics from pre-K. That is the biggest area you can close the gap, especially with Latino and African American and poverty children, especially with that three groups. If you don't have a good pre-K program, you might as well just hang it up because you're not going to get it done. If you try to do it just in high school, that's only 720 days, packed with classes and activities. You're not going to get it done. You have to have a value chain, just like in business. It extends all the way down to pre-K, all the way up through college. And you need predictive analytics all the way up. Something in K-5, something in 6-8. We found that algebra by 8th grade will add almost 150 points on an African American or Latino score. Algebra by the 8th grade. 9 through 12, other predictive analytics that go all the way up to success in college and career, all the way through grade 13. We have 2 districts. Both of them would be in the top 50 in the United States. They're all in one county. The red area has about 67,000 students in it. 80% minority students, very high free and reduced lunch. And we try to differentiate. I wonder if you drew a map of California, would you see some trend? Or if you drew a map of your own system, would you see some trend that people do that? I originally drew that map to show people where they lived and put their elementary schools on, to show the differential between the poverty, and I moved a house around to show what that house value would do depending on where you were at. So we had 2 or more districts. How can we all work together? Yes, we need capitalism. I'm for it. I was trained as a business major, undergraduate, went into education. It is about survival of the fittest. And yes, we need the egalitarianism that we find in schools because we do want all of our kids to graduate, don't we? It's the tension between those two. You have to have the right tension. Too much on the capitalism, you'll drive people to cheat or leave. Too much on the egalitarianism, you'll go too slow, it'll feel good, and everybody will feel good, but they won't have learned anything. What can you do as business or educators? If you're an educator here, purchase your National College Clearinghouse information. It's cheap, and find out how your kids did and back map all the way down. Analyze your results. See if your juice is worth the squeeze and build your predictive analytics. What can you do as a business? Consolidate your various business education partnerships into a single point of entry. And here is the most important. Through that entity, treat the school system like it was one of your most important clients. You wouldn't go into one of your most important clients and say, you're a loser, would you? Treat them like a client. If you're a foundation, and I know we have some of them here, resist the temptation to promote your fund and your signature solutions. We have so many signature solutions. Form strategic alliances with other foundations and go all the way up and down that value chain. Work together, have the right people, the right plan, the right processes, and the right persistence, and then you will be Superman in California. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. That was an inspiring talk. So certainly one can draw from the remarks that you said that even if Superman were made of money and not steel, it wouldn't solve all of our problems. But as you know about California, we do have a bit of a money problem here. Now, we didn't bring you here to say, throw up your hands and say, California, it's impossible to do anything. But nonetheless, what do you think couldn't have been done in Montgomery County, which has, I don't know, 2, 3, perhaps 5,000 more dollars per student, and I was looking at your ratio of students to class to teachers. It's like 13 to 1, and in California it's the highest in the nation, probably be going even higher. So what do you think, where was money a factor, and what might you not have been able to do in Montgomery County without those additional resources?
First of all, we differentiate. In some of our areas, you're right, we have 13 to 1. In others, we have 30 to 1. So it depends on where you're at. Money makes a difference, but you've got to spend it correctly. And we spend a lot of our extra money, as you pointed out, on training. A lot of school systems in America only train their people 3 or 4 days a year. There's no business out there that would do that. Your training is constant. So we really push training for our employees to hit our commitment level. We work closely with our unions, to build the culture of success to drive this institutional change. In fact, our unions who help us build the budget went in the last 2 years ago, gave up $90 million in wages so we could keep this going. And they voted 80% to do that because they were part of the plan. So money makes a difference. How you spend your money makes more of a difference. If you don't have a culture, you won't get it initiated and you'll lose money that way. If you don't have a structure, you'll leak all over the place and chase every little thing that everybody puts down. Try to move it together. Try to build the right structure, try to build the right culture, and yes, you're going to have some money to make that go. California, you've got to do well. You've got 5 million children. That's almost 10% of all the children in the United States of America. Our country's at risk if you don't do well.
Good, thank you. So Darrell and Tom, let's flip that question around. And what can California do to improve performance, perhaps along some of the lines that Dr. Weast mentioned, without additional money, or even perhaps with even less of it?
Maybe I'll start by saying thank you, Jerry, for your leadership and the team theme. I'm a high school cross-country coach for 25 years, and the team theme is together everyone accomplishes more, and I want to thank the Bay Area Council for being a real team in the Bay Area on behalf of education, and examples of where you bring the administration, teachers together, business, labor leaders together with the entire education community. You see great results. The Bay Area Council led an effort in San Francisco to raise a parcel tax and invest the money in smart ways. So I want to acknowledge that and thank the Bay Area Council for that. Linda Gallagher is on my transition team. We are looking at some of the things that are occurring in Montgomery County and also innovative things that are working throughout California. So we're taking advantage of this crisis. You have to look at opportunities in the midst of the crisis, but it is a really hard reality to face that we're cutting $18 billion in the last 3 years. Schools have lost 1/3 of their funding. And so when California invested years back, 3 decades ago, we were the top investors in the nation. We were also the top performers. Today, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, they are investing at $10, $11, $12, $13, $14, $15,000 per pupil. California, where I visited with Governor Brown just this recent trip to Riverside County, they're at $5,000 per student. So the top performing states in the nation are getting more money to help with crowded classrooms, to have the computers and textbooks there. At the same time, we see a challenge for us all to reorient the way we teach and to use the computer technology to get away from the bubble test as the sole determinant of what success is. Darrell, Steinberg and I are working together on redefining the targets for success in California that involve more what the business community is saying you need. You need critical thinking, problem solving, great communication skills. These are things we see going on, for instance, in Napa County is one example where we have the community business leaders working in the schools and fantastic results of kids engaged, not bored, performing well, working in teams. We need more of that.
Darrell, what can we do without additional dollars?
Well, first of all, thank you to the Bay Area Council for inviting me and for being one of the leading lights here around much of what is right about California. You know, I was struck by one of Dr. Weast's slides at the end, which was, if I can paraphrase it, make sure that the schools, if you're a business, are your leading client. Mm-hmm. And though there are tremendous examples of the business community in California being involved in our public schools, whether it's helping lead campaigns to pass parcel taxes or mentorship programs, there's a whole variety of things. But fundamentally, the issues of economic development and education are separate in this state. And maybe that's true across the country as well. But certainly in California, we have a whole separate public policy around what we need to do to grow the economy, and a whole separate policy about what we need to do to fix the schools. And the two are not linked. At the same time, we see 100,000 kids dropping out of high school every year in California. And a bit of an overgeneralization, but with a lot of truth, a one-size-fits-all approach to the way we deliver education in this state. And so one of the things I think we can do and must do, and maybe we can get into this in some greater detail over the course of the hour, is to use our tax system to use all of the tools at our disposal to create a real partnership between public education and our economic development strategies by creating curriculum that focuses a whole lot more on career pathways, that makes learning much more practical, rigorous, but practical, and that prepares young people for the kind of jobs that we will expect them to do in the growth sectors of our economy.
I noticed that your benchmarks are really oriented to have students prepare for a four-year college. And Darrell, I know that career readiness is a concern for you. Do you distinguish between college readiness and career readiness?
Yes and no, to give a definitive answer.
Okay.
Let me illustrate what I think is at the nub of the challenge here. I want to talk about the University of California for a moment. Can I stand up? Is that all right?
Just
15 minutes on the clock?
Just don't filibuster.
No, I won't filibuster. I promise I won't. I'll be very quick. The University of California defines rigor in California. The University of California has developed what they call the A to G requirements that are the pre-admission requirements to the UC and to the CSU. And they're the coin of the realm in many ways. They're what we should aspire to. But the UC over the course of time has not done much. They're improving, but they have not done much to actually develop not just adjunct career education courses that meet the A to G requirement, but more fundamentally, A to G, as I said a moment ago, is largely one size fits all. And one of the things that we have asked the university to do is to convene the business community, education stakeholders, and use their research capability to try to develop 10 different ways to teach core academic courses that are applied to the growth sectors of the economy. Why can't algebra be taught in applied ways that integrate biotechnology with algebra?
Okay.
Construction. Pick the growth sectors of the healthcare, pick the growth sectors of the economy, and let's make sure that every core course can be taught in various applied ways. Kids drop out of high school in large part, the surveys show, because they don't understand the relevance between what it is they're being taught and what they might do with their lives. And yet we have not done the hard work in this state or in this country of trying to look at curriculum of what we are teaching in a way that not only maintains the rigor that is essential, because you don't want to track kids. That's why I say yes and no. It should be about college and career readiness, whether or not kids eventually go to college or not. But our work, it seems to me, around education and education reform is to look at the way we are delivering the product and to make it more relevant to what we want to ask young people to do when they become young adults.
Thanks. Now, Tom, I know you've been a big supporter of career academies as well.
Absolutely agree with Darrell on that point. And looking at the partnership academies that do exist, that are successful, where businesses come in and provided internships in real-world settings, have come on campus and shared their wealth of knowledge. The business leaders have done that with our students, where the curriculum is aligned. For instance, in a pre-engineering construction academy, you'll see the mathematics centered around building things. You'll see the science centered around that. You'll be reading about the building of the pyramids and the building of the great cathedrals and bridge building, and it's all relevant and it's motivating and there's a direction. And whether or not you choose that career path, ultimately you're motivated and you learn about learning, you learn life skills, you learn workplace skills, so you are ready for college or career. You may end up deciding to go into an apprenticeship program and be a great carpenter and make a great living that way, or you may decide to go on the track to the university and become a great architect. But that relevancy makes a huge difference. And again, going to those skills, Tony Wagner in his book, The Global Achievement Gap, talks about the skills needed in the 21st century and in the 21st century workplace, what the rest of the world is learning is teamwork, critical thinking, problem solving. So along with the relevant curriculum, a new approach to learning, which we can adopt.
Were you able to do that in Montgomery County?
Absolutely. You just described what turns our kids on. Remember I said they get bored? Remember I said it's about teacher engagement and student engagement? We have those career academies. They teach the rigorous. We embed those critical thinking skills, those problem-solving skills, how to get along, how to learn, all the way from preschool all the way up. We do academies. Our business community put together this professional development seminar for our students called 720. 800 or 900 kids come in. Businesses are telling them what it takes to be in business. They do that with freshmen and sophomores to give them some thinking. Maybe they can't go out and volunteer, maybe they can't do that, but we can host ways. We have biomedical academies, construction academies, all kinds of academies. We even have a stock exchange from NASDAQ. You know, these are things that turn people on. Don't substitute training for a specific job, though.
Right.
Don't do that. Because the jobs that we knew 5 years ago are gone. Rigor can go through all of these.
Correct.
Somebody that works on your car and charges $150 back where we are on the other side, they better be good. They better know their technology, they better know how to access, and they better do it quick and effective and efficiently. Plumbers, everything. It's all high tech, high touch now.
So in Montgomery County, you sort of reversed engineered sort of the education process. You saw where you wanted to be, and then you backed up and figured out, we came up with benchmarks, which I guess they're called 7 keys to college readiness, that you measure students along the way. And I was wondering, Darrell and Tom, is there anything that strikes you? Is that something that the state should be doing, other than, you know, our standardized tests? And Darrell, you may even have a bill, Senate Bill 547, that may deal a little bit with that and with regard to the academic performance index. But
Sure. Senator Torlakson and I are actually partnering and working together on changing the academic performance index to recognize that high-stakes testing is relevant, but that maybe the pendulum has swung a little too far, and that our testing instruments are not broad enough to test for college and career readiness. And so we want to suggest this year that we change the API in a way that will encompass college and career readiness in more objective ways. Because a school shouldn't just be teaching to the test, as we often hear the frequent complaint, but also ought to be measured by graduation rates, ought to be measured by what percentage of young people go to college or to a career technical training program. And then over time, if it is possible, to look at the longitudinal data and see how those young people are actually doing in the workforce. There's an opportunity not to get rid of testing, but to make sure that we have a much more robust and broad measure of testing for success, and again, related to the economy.
And it's obvious life is not a bubble test, it's not a multiple choice test, so that critical thinking and some of the other elements, are we teaching science? So what do we do about dropouts? As pro tem leader, Darrell Steinberg put a measure forward that says, let's measure what schools are doing about the dropout rate. And if you succeed in having more students stay engaged and stay in school, what happens to your test scores? They'll go down for a little while because they're coming, those students that you've saved from going off to basically limbo in many cases, you're helping them and your test scores won't go up as much. We do need to set targets that are clear and that we have buy-in from the entire community, as was stated by Jerry. So you have the teachers, you have the administrators, school board, all working in that same direction. So I'm confident that we'll be able to come up with a new system for that. We do have some measuring standards right now, and the new CalPAD system, which is a student identifier number tracking students over time, will give us very rich data that we absolutely needed to measure a whole host of things. But we now have the CSUs, the Cal State Universities, have an early assessment that they do for 10th and 11th graders that gives diagnostic information of what students need to learn to be eligible for college, what courses they need to take. I, for instance, on another front, am looking at a 3rd grade target for literacy, that we should have 90% of the students in California literate in the English language by 3rd grade. We know what happens when they're not literate. After that, they start to fall behind. And our prisons are crowded with people who have a 3rd and 4th grade reading level. So setting a standard, for instance, as you've done, we're looking at where those benchmarks should be and a richer way of measuring student success.
Don't do anything that doesn't tell a child something, a parent something, or a community member something. It's kind of like going to Disneyland and there's Pluto and you can't ride the ride until you're this tall. We teach children how to monitor their success. In kindergarten, they've got to read on the 6th level of reading, running record. They're able to match that, keep their own little data notebooks. If they do, they know they'll hit the 70th percentile on the Terra Nova at the 2nd grade. If they do that, they'll hit the 70th percentile in math at the 5th grade. They'll get out of algebra. They'll do algebra 2. They know how to do that. We reversed engineered from our outcome all the way down to preschool, put it in multiple languages, teach it in parent academies, stay the course.
So the use of data is clearly critical. And Tom, you mentioned CalPads and how much data it will produce, but right now it's not producing much, and we're having a lot of trouble with CalPads. And it was interesting talking with Jerry that the data you use is a district data.
Absolutely.
It's not from the state of Maryland, and you went ahead and did the National Clearinghouse to track your students. So I guess my question is, in terms of CalPads, districts can do it. They can do it on their own, and we're having trouble with CalPads. Should we give up on it and have every district do what Jerry has done in Montgomery County?
Well, we should not give up on it, and it's getting back on track, and it was a state contract that goes back many years, and it's struggled. It hasn't been funded as much as it should be funded, but its potential is rich. We have 6,250,000 students, so we have an enormous set of students to measure over time, and then we have the wealth of the state, the taxes you pay, the taxes Californians pay that needs to be divvied out, allocated out. We need to look at that data and that 6.2 million students and figure out how we can best help them work. But the other thing that we do right now already is use data assessments in informing instruction, in differentiating instruction so that every child has a success plan that's designed by the teachers. The amazing, magical software, the computer learning programs that will track someone through mathematics. And as they build one concept, they're competent, they go on to the next concept. And if they get stuck, there's 5 more games you play to get that one concept down, and then you go on to the next level. The same with English learning, language arts, science. So the teachers I know that are seeing greatest success, and it's all throughout California, but needs to be equipped better with the computers in our classrooms, those teachers are taking the data on a weekly basis and looking at how John and Sally are doing on a weekly basis, and parents can access the same data. The student gets instant feedback. The computer program tells you where you're at in your progress, and it's just the kind of direction we need to go simultaneously with the large-scale measuring system.
Stick with your data system. I'll tell you why. Kids move. They move all over the state. Poor kids move more 3 to 5 times in their first 6 to 7 years. So if you have every district having do its own thing, you won't keep track of that. You lose time. You only have 180 days. There's only 6 hours in that day. You want to use every minute efficiently and effectively. So fix your system. Get on with it quickly, though, because you need to keep track of those children all the way through, because learning in the 21st century is going to be anytime, anywhere, any place, any device. Any device. These kids are walking around with devices right now in their pocket that can do marvelous things, and we're not even tapping into it. We're not even tapping into it. So if we're going to hold time steady, and we don't want to have this differential in achievement, we're going to have to work smarter and more efficiently. And you need all your people engaged to do that.
We wish we had 180 days in many districts. It's now down to 175, and who knows?
Well, that's a shame.
Yeah, where it will head. But
Which is why, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Back to the question of money. Money matters.
Yeah.
I was again struck by Dr. Weast's comment about the single most important thing you can do, if I'm paraphrasing, is to make sure you have preschool for kids and start them early. That, as with many things, is a matter of being able to make the public investment to create across the board, or at least targeted in a more comprehensive way, preschool. In California, we've had to be creative, and there's nothing wrong with being creative, but last year we pushed back the date of kindergarten and plowed the savings into a early year of kindergarten for those same children. Well, that's not universal preschool. It doesn't create the breadth that we need to create, but money matters. And in California right now, make a shameless political plug, if that's all right. We have some choices to make here. We have to decide whether to extend existing taxes that have been on the books for several years for 5 more years, or cut $5 billion more from public education. And given the numbers that the superintendent raised a moment ago about the cuts and the declining investment we made in California over the last several years, nothing is impossible, but it will be very, very difficult to think about career education in a more profound way, preschool in a more profound way, when we're cutting $5 billion. We shouldn't do it, and we've got to find a way to get those revenues.
Yeah, I mean, Darrell, you were hopefully able to preserve green technology academies, but doing it through an infinitesimally small charge on ratepayers, but a recognition that without that, they would not be preserved this year, no?
We went outside Prop 98 to try to build green career academies. We're using an Energy Commission surcharge to fund public education in part. You know, I'll get criticized a little bit for it. No apologies. I think we ought to be crossing jurisdictions here, and education ought to be an issue that the energy community cares about.
Right. Tom, it's not, well, it is relevant. Take a second and say what the impact of a potential loss of $5 billion might do to the schools in California.
Well, already, and I'm so glad we're focused on this, and I'm so glad the Bay Area Council took a stand to support Governor Brown's budget. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so glad of the progressive track record of this Council of Leaders on preschool and on investing in education. But what's already happened prior to this year is 1/3 again of the funding of K-12 schools has disappeared. And with that comes a school year that was one of the shortest in the world. And time on task, time engaged is critical to learning and success, especially for the kids coming from poverty and English learner backgrounds. And so we have seen summer school eliminated. We've seen a 180-day school year, which was one of the shortest in the modern world, the industrialized world, go to 175 days. We have superintendents now talking about 165-day school year, 160-day school year. We are going in totally opposite direction. Japan, China, Singapore, so many other countries have 200 days, 210 days of instruction. They're not on an agrarian calendar. We're stuck on an agrarian calendar, and now that summer school's been eliminated in the last few years, we're back to summer months or on your own time, and for many parents that are working, that means their kids are not getting instruction, they're not progressing in their learning. So it would mean another 30,000 teachers have disappeared, they're gone. Another 20,000 teachers would go if the tax extension does not occur. And translate that, it's not about teacher jobs, it's about classrooms. Like in Arlanza district, Arlanza Elementary School, we visited a 4th grade teacher with 35 students packed in that class. Last year it was 22 students. We're again seeing classrooms at 40 students packed all across districts in California. How can a teacher differentiate the learning and instruction and have an individual success strategy for each student when that kind of crowding occurs? So we have the most crowded classrooms, one of the shortest school years. We must pull together the team and support Darrell and the legislature in coming to a bipartisan deal on keeping those investments going. And thank you, Bay Area Council, for helping with that.
So Montgomery County did something which I think is quite remarkable, which is, as you saw on the map, it's red zone, which is recognizing that more resources needed to go to some low-income areas within that county, and it did so voluntarily and willingly. Now, we've talked about in California a weighted student formula which would direct money to English learners and low-income children as well. I guess it's difficult to talk about that when we're talking about losing money, to hold schools harmless for the money that they might lose with a weighted student formula. But is this a direction that you'd like to see us go, and how do you think we can get there, both of you?
Well, I say first, yes, it's logical. We need to look at where the need is greatest and where an investment will have the greatest success for all kids. We can't do that, though, by taking money away from some districts that have higher wealth or higher per capita funding and give it to the districts that have less. I think we have to do it as the economy recovers, and we're resilient, we're California, the economy's kind of going to come back, but as it comes back, look at differentiating some of that new wealth or restored wealth to the areas that need it the most. We've done it in other ways. For instance, I authored the after-school programs in California. We're targeting the lower 3 deciles. So in 4,000 schools, from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock, those students who are in underperforming schools and have poverty or English learning challenges in their life, they're getting that extra 3 hours a day. We also did it in the Quality Education Improvement Act, where we targeted money to the lower 2 deciles of schools into 500 schools. Each one gets another $250,000 a year. And it's magical, the success. Their test scores have been going up as they build teams, professional development, mentoring. So that works.
If you look at the red-green map and remember what that looked like, we didn't rob from the green to give to the red. What we did is differentiate all new money that we could and repurpose things that were going in the wrong direction. Once you choose a target, you can start repurposing. And we purposed it to that red area. You have to have early childhood there. We don't have universal. If this was your lawn, you don't turn the green grass brown. You turn the red grass green. So it's even all over. And you have to do some differentiation to do that. Let's start using some common sense and start getting a plan together that actually is logical for children. And if you don't think children want to go to college, you're wrong. 90% of America's children want to go. But they can't turn on that college light without the preparation. And they can do that through their careers because that gives them the inspiration. We're a little heavy on inspiration and a little light on structure. And if you don't really turn on some time, you're going to be in trouble.
Real quickly, the one thing I think we can all agree on in California is that the school finance system is far too complicated. If you can't explain Prop 98, categoricals, and the property tax interactions, can't explain it to most legislators, frankly. If you can't explain it to the public, you know you've got too complex of a system. And one of the things that I hope happens out of this budget crisis in California is that we begin to transfer more control and fiscal capability of schools to local districts. Because right now it's fairly top down. The state raises the money and we pass about 70% of it on to school districts and counties. And counties don't have much opportunity to raise the parcel tax or to be able to define local priorities because of what has occurred in this state since the passage of Prop 13 in 1978. And Prop 13 did many good things, and we shouldn't completely reverse it, but it may be time to look at some modifications that give local districts more control over the revenue side of their equations.
I see our green light is turning to red, so I did want to ask one last question. And I was struck, Jerry, in what I had read about Montgomery County, the level of satisfaction among teachers was very high, something like 90%. And clearly you've made great strides with the unions to get that level of cooperation. I wonder if you might talk about that for a moment, and then, gentlemen, I want to...
Treat people like they're human beings. Talk to them, listen. Give them a target that they want to do. They wanted to get these kids college and career ready. Get behind them and try to solve their problems. We try to solve all the political problems, everybody that brings us a complaint. Why don't we try to solve a student's problem and a teacher problem? Their problem is about engagement. Thank you. Thank you. Don't chase all the rabbits, and for crying out loud, don't overcome yourself with your own brilliance and make it too complicated. What's at risk here, ladies and gentlemen, is our country. That next generation is going to have to pay off this horrible debt that we have. Let's get it well educated.
Darrell, Tom, with regard to teacher cooperation and working with teachers, is there anything that can be done on a state level, or is this all chemistry at a local level?
It's a combination, and I want to do a shout out to the teachers who are daily, valiantly working on the front line, passionately from their heart, with their best of their mind, working to help kids succeed. I see teachers, faculty by faculty, local association by local association, sitting down, examining these tough problems, looking at accountability, looking together with the principals that are progressive leaders, building that local team of success. We need to encourage that in the state with legislation, targets, with dollars to the districts to reward the good work that's going on. But I believe that it's essential that we have parents, business, labor, teachers, and administration all working on a common team. theme.
Darrell, the final word.
I've had a few arguments with the teachers union over the last several years, specifically about seniority-based layoffs. And those issues about teacher quality and teacher evaluation and the due process rights of teachers and how we balance that with making sure the teachers who don't belong in the classroom route are important issues. But to me, the education reform debate in this state and in this country is way too narrow. And teachers too often are the scapegoat, frankly, for all the problems with the system. I'd like to see the union movement and the reform movement come together around building a new and broader agenda around connecting public education and economic development in a more profound way, and change the curriculum in ways that reflect that partnership. That's more important than the political fights that go on in Washington and in California around important issues, but not nearly as important as what we're doing to create pathways for young people to succeed in life.
Thank you.
Last word. Thank you.
We've run out of time. Unfortunately, it's been a terrific panel. And I think clearly Jerry would be the first person to acknowledge, and he did already, that there's no Superman. There's no one individual that can solve our problems, and there's not one single solution. It's a system of integrated parts, and it's time for, if we can keep the potholes from getting bigger and keep the oil from leaking in the crankcase, we can get our hands dirty and get going. So I thank our panelists for
Thank you,
your
John.
provocative
Thank you.
discussion.
Good job.
Great.
Here you, Tom.
Good.